Hi guys, this is the Unit 4 lecture, and Chanel, come on, Chanel. Sorry. Okay, so this is the lecture for Unit 4, and if you've looked at Unit 4 already, you may have noticed that the topic is audience and purpose in correspondence. So it's similar to what we did in the last unit because we're still working with email. So this lecture is going to be shorter than the others because it's a little bit, well, I don't want it to be repetitive, but it covers some of the same information. So so we're specifying in audience and purpose in email correspondence and memos. So just to go back over some of the do's and don'ts for email in the workplace from, chapter 7. Give me 1 second. Okay, so you want to remember that the subject line in an email is one of the most important parts of the email because that is the first chance that you have to set your email apart from others and to help ensure that it gets opened. So you always want to make the best use of your subject line by being as direct and specific as possible. A bad example or an example of a bad subject line would be important. Like, let's say if you just write in the subject line, important, that doesn't tell the person anything. However, if you say tomorrow's meeting is canceled, that's great because you're being very specific, and you can judge a good subject line from a bad one because a good subject line gives your audience an accurate sense of the content of the email. So that's what you want to do with your subject line. You also want to consider the needs of your audience, which may sound kind of basic, but think about who your audience is and the audience's needs. You want to keep the email short. Remember that the standard is supposed to be that the person can open up your email and read the whole thing without doing any scrolling, okay? Email is written in block format, and what that means is that you don't indent. You want to keep the paragraphs short, and that means 6 to 8 lines, generally speaking, per paragraph, and you should skip one space between paragraphs. Let's see, what else? You want to use lists whenever possible because lists are more reader-friendly than text. You want to keep your sentences short, be concise, use specific language whenever possible because specific language gives your reader more information. You want to avoid emojis or like cute symbols. You should always use proper capitalization. Don't ever use all caps, just in case you aren't aware of this. Using all caps is like you're yelling at your audience. And let's see. Oh, and you always want to make sure that your email address is respectable. So you wouldn't want an email address like partygirl21. It's always good to go with your name. That's something that's professional and simple and just easy to go with. You always want to use a salutation. That's super important, and that just means that you say hello to the person you're writing to, and you also include that person's name. You could say hi, good morning, dear Bob, good morning Bob, hi Bob. Any of those greetings is fine, but I can just tell you that it makes a world of difference that you are using one. I'm the English department coordinator at Kane Ocean, so I get tons of emails every day, and sometimes I'll get emails that are to me, they have no greeting. It'll just be from a student asking me or telling me to do something, and I can't tell you how, I don't know, it just feels like almost just like a slap in the face almost when there's no greeting and salutation. So it's very important to use a greeting, and then it's also equally important to close with, you know, with a proper closing, which could be goodbye, thank you, and then your name. And then you can also end with something like regards or cheers or best wishes. The greeting and the closing are important because they can really make a difference in setting a warm tone, which creates sort of a mood or a sense of goodwill between both parties, and it makes a difference in your correspondence. Let's see. I think those. So in terms of the email, and then also always make sure that your email is complete. What does that mean? Sorry. That means that you include all of the information so that the person you're writing to isn't going to have to write to and ask you for more information. And it also ensures that you're not going to have to send a second email. Something else you should always keep in mind is to include information on deadlines. This was something that you could have applied in the email, the DQ last week when you were writing to someone to ask them for a favor or to do something for you. Especially in professional setting, if you're ever, writing to a colleague and asking them to help you with a project or that type of thing, it's very helpful if you provide that person by a deadline, or you don't want to call it a deadline in the email, but a date by which you would like to get a response from that person. And then also, especially if you're asking for help with something, it's very helpful if you can tell the person the amount of time that that might be asked of them. So let's say that you're asking for help on a new project. If you could let the person know that let's say a total of 4 hours of their time will be needed in total, that's helpful information. Or maybe you could say that you're going to need this person 1 hour once a week for the rest of the semester. Concrete information like that is very helpful to the person you are soliciting for help, because the more information that you can give that person, of course without giving too much information, but the more information you can provide, it puts the recipient in a better position to say yes to you or no to you. So and that, in terms of just the basic do's and don'ts of email, those are the general rules. Now, I did a lot of digging to try and find better tips for writing strong emails, and the thing that I kept running into on website after website and in article after article was emphasis on the subject line. All of the sources that I mined agree that the subject line is super important and that you should always use it to set your email apart and to really just be specific and be as direct as possible. So I just want to emphasize that again. Always use the subject line to make sure, or to do everything you can to make sure that your email gets read. Again, be specific, be direct, and try to give the recipient an accurate sense of what it is that the email is about. Something else that you might want to think about before you write your email is what do you want to result from this? Like, what are you hoping for? What is your goal? And then if you write the email with that in mind, And then a second step that you might want to take into consideration is there an action that you want the recipient to take? If so, it's helpful for both parties, for you and the recipient, if you let them know that there is a desired action that you would like them to take. Now, of course, you want to be polite. You don't want to make it sound like you're making a demand. But if you can politely let the person know that you would like it if they could take a certain action, for example, reply to your email, or RSVP to an event, something like that. So you can always put in the subject line action required, or action requested. So that way you're letting the person know that you would like them to do something. And by letting them know, you're also increasing the chances that your goal will be accomplished. So that way you're going to accomplish what you want through sending the email. And let's see, another tip that I found that many sources agreed upon was and this actually surprised me, drafting the email. So email is preferred and used and so popular because it is so effective, right? We can write it and just do a couple sentences, send it off. And especially in the workplace when we got so many, and the emphasis is often placed upon response time, it seems maybe I don't know, like a luxury to write a draft. But if possible, if at all possible, if you can write a draft, and then if you can let it sit for 24 hours, that's even more desirable. If you can do that, the advantage is that if you let's say you draft the email, you let it sit for 24 hours, and then before you send it, you go back and proofread it. You will have gained just a little bit of objective distance, and you'll be in a better position to proofread it for careless errors, or any little changes that you might want to make. So that is something that if you're writing an email or a message, that's really important, and you can write a draft and then let it sit for 24 hours. Those are two advisable steps. Let's see. So something else that you might want to consider, there are what's called smart send times, and that just means that there's research suggesting that there are sometimes when it's better to send email, certain times and days of the week that you have greater chances of getting a response, or of your email being read. So statistically, the best time a day to send an email is Tuesday between 9 o'clock in the morning and 12 noon. Many corporations and organizations actually do extensive research on different demographics to find out what is the best time for, let's say, college students, or maybe young mothers or families. So it gets more complicated, as you go further into who is the audience. But just generally speaking, statistically, the best time to send an email is between 9 o'clock and noon on a Tuesday. And let's see. And in terms of email, those are really the most important things to take into consideration. So those are the most important factors to consider. Those are the most important steps to take. In terms of memos, I would say that you probably won't write a lot of memos. Most people, even in a professional setting, don't. I don't think I've ever written one except a sample memo for this class. But generally speaking, a memo is an internal document, and what that means is it is used to communicate within a company or an organization. So let's say at Kane, the Human Resources Department posts or sends memos to everyone at Kane. Let's say if they have maybe a new policy, for example, during the summer, rather than typically we work a 5-hour or a 5-day work week, but in the summer, instead of working 5 days, we work Monday through Thursday, and our hours are extended, but then we don't have to work on Fridays. So every summer, let's say in June, we get a memo from Human Resources, and it just informs us of these policy changes. So that's probably one of the best examples I can think of to provide you with of a memo in a professional setting. But the important things to remember are that a memo is an internal document. So it's sent to employees within the same organization, and because it's going within an organization that you all work for, titles are not required. So let's say if you're sending an email or a letter, you would typically put the recipient's name and title, but in a memo, you don't need to do that. In a memo, the salutation and greeting is not required. It's not even used, and the closing is also something that is not typically done. Emails must be short. They should never be more than a page, and if you need to send an email that's longer than that, it's said that you should send the material in an attachment or find a different way of sending the information. But a memo can actually be long. It could be as long as 3 pages. So that's something else that you want to keep in mind about a memo. And then in terms of formatting a memo, let's see. So you can look, I don't want to bore you with the details, and if I went through it, it would probably be hard to follow what I'm saying. But if you look in chapter 7 of the textbook, it will lay out the formatting for a memo. But in short, it starts with a to. The first line is to, and then from, and then beneath that is the date, and then beneath the date is the subject. Okay, and again, you don't need a greeting when the memo opens. The subject line should also be precise and informative, as it is with an email. And the format is typically purpose. So why is this memo being sent? The first thing that should be stated is its purpose, followed by a summary. The summary is just what it sounds like, a 1-sentence summation of the memo, followed by a discussion, and that's kind of just the key points, which can be in list format because that's more reader friendly. And then last is the conclusion. So in the conclusion, you want to state any actions that the recipients need to take and any recommendations. And you can also use lists or tables in the conclusion. So that is the basic information for a memo. And if you want more details, you can go in the textbook to chapter 7. So just a quick word to you on the assignments for Unit 4. So the discussion question asks, what writing strategies can you use to engage your reader in an email? And why is it so difficult to get and maintain your reader's attention? So in terms of getting and maintaining your reader's attention, some things that you might want to think about, but it's up to you. Burnout. Many corporations and organizations acknowledge that their employees are just frankly burnt out from receiving too many emails and email overload. So that is a real thing that is actually acknowledged. Let's see what else. And that just creates an environment in which people often receive dozens or hundreds of emails a day So that kind of creates a tough environment for you to send your email, and then for your email to be read and responded to in a real capacity. So you're kind of up against, it's kind of challenging. So you want to take that into consideration. What can you do to combat that? Write a better email, keep it short, concise, send it during the optimal times, and take advantage of the subject line. So again, make your subject precise. If you can, say something that might also entice the reader to open. And if there is a desired action you would like the reader to take, you can include it in the subject line. Those are all things that will increase the chances that the recipient is going to open and respond to your email. Let's see. Another strategy you might want to think about is the use of lists, graphics, tables. You also definitely don't want to underestimate the importance of white spaces. I don't know if you can, I'm sure you can relate to this. When I get an email that's just a block of text, I just kind of, my tendency is to want to just close it up and put it and just ignore it, because it feels so intimidating and just like so much work. So you don't want to create that reaction, your recipient, and the best way to do that is by keeping your emails short. What does that mean? It means short paragraphs that should not go over 6 to 8 lines. It means that you skip a line between each paragraph, and everything should be nice and uniform, and you can do that by not indenting the first line of every paragraph and keeping it in block format. What else? So your next assignment, the unit 4 correspondence assignment asks you to look at some of your peers' discussion posts from last week and to choose one email written by one of your classmates and respond to it. So just a suggestion in terms of your response, just follow the tips I mentioned earlier in this lecture, but you should definitely include things like deadlines, dates, how much time does your request require of the person, if you're asking for help with something or money, give concrete figures, how many hours of the person's time, how many dollars are you asking for. If you want an RSVP, when is the RSVP desired by? Provide specific information. And I think that's it. I remember I looked at your discussion questions last week and I commented on some. The most important things are probably the subject line and the general nature of the email. Is it concise? Does it contain all of the necessary information? Oh, and then always use specific language. The more specific your language, the better. An example of general language would be, this is the last thing and then I'll close. Let's say I tell you that I drive a car. That's very general. It doesn't really tell you anything. Or I could say I drive a 2023 Jeep Renegade. So that's like the difference between working smarter rather than harder. So I didn't have to really spend much more time or use many more words. But in the second sentence with the specific language, you get a lot more information. So that's why specific language is so much better than general language. And let's see, the last assignment is a memo that you're being asked to write. It asks you to research companies that you're interested in and imagine that you're in a position within the company. And then I think it gives you a couple options. One is to write a memo from human resources announcing a new policy being added to your company. So again, just follow the memo formatting that I identified just about 10 minutes back in this lecture, and you should be fine. Memos follow pretty much the same rules as emails, except again they could be longer. You don't need the greeting, the closing, and let's see what else. And they are strictly internal documents. So I hope that this was helpful. Yeah, and that's it. And I look forward to continuing to read your work and talking to you through the comments. Bye bye.